So welcome everyone. I'm Daniel Deslauriers. I'm, as some of you know, being students in the Transformative Studies department. I'm a teacher, professor there in the program, and we are doing this special events for our students and for the public at large. So we have you'll see some familiar faces of the students in the program, and you might see people who you haven't met yet, because this is also advertised to the public. And for those who come for the public, I'll put out our info session information at the end of the talk if you're interested in more in the program than in the content of this talk, or as well you're interested in the program because of the content of this talk. So welcome. I was just sharing this beautiful image of an artist that we met in San Miguel de Allende, Paloma Dominguez, and I'll share it again. It's just a beautiful image, just to begin our focus around dreams and heart knowing, because it's very dreamy, and you could see now the sense of the body and the earth body being interrelated, what I would call, in my term, reciprocally embedded. We embedded in the earth is embedded in us. Those deep connection now are made explicit in the women tree earth body that is there, and at the heart of the image is the heart, and that's the right there at the center. And then you have all of these meandering a connection that you might say the heart is what connects what's below to what's above, because it's right there at the center. I just thought it was a very evocative image for us to see and to bring to our consciousness, and very dreamlike, because it's very much like dream. You might say almost like dream images woven inside the dream. Perhaps future baby or past baby, or someone who's lost, or someone who will appear in your life, and whatnot. So my talk, I'm really interested in dreams, and I'm interested in what we call in consciousness study the second person approach to consciousness. If the first person approach is the consciousness towards yourself, like your consciousness, your dreams, your thoughts, you have privileged access to that. The second approach, the second person approach, is the approach that what we create together when we come together, the relational dimension of consciousness. So consciousness is not just something that happens in my brain. It's actually happening right now among us in a context of a sharing. And then, the third person approach, that's the one of science, looking at the object over there. So you might say, from an integral perspective, it's the I, the it, and then the we. In a Wilberian sense, there's also the it's, meaning like the system that we're a part of. So that's also, I'm not going to talk too much about system today, about the we of system, but more the we of in between people, and what I call, or what it's called in psychology, intersubjectivity. So it's my subjectivity meeting your subjectivity, and then the role of the dream in kind of illuminating this intersubjective space, So, and I thought that what I would do is sharing a dream that I wrote an article about, that became the center of my philosophical, or a focus of my philosophical questioning of the nature of intersubjectivity. And it's a very, very simple dream, so you don't have to hold too many images in your mind. And then I'll put also the article. I share this dream with our students who take my class, published in this wonderful magazine called Revision. And there's a print issue, but you have all of the dream and access, free access, open access to the article, there online. And some of my talk is also from the work that I've done on integral dreaming that is published at SUNY Press. It says SAGE, in my bio, but it's really SUNY Press. Yeah, intersubjectivity is kind of a mystery to me. Not that relationship is easy for anybody, but there's a sense that I know who I am. I can have a sense of who you are, but where do we locate the we? Like, what is the nature of the we-ness? That it's intangible, and I think that dreams are kind of a special conduit for us to understand kind of deeper what is the nature of that intangible space and the intersubjective space. And as I want to demonstrate a little bit of my process when I look at the dream. Now, it's a dream that occurred, I would say, almost 10 years ago. It took me 2 or 3 years to write the article, and then it took 4 years for the article to be published. So a lot have happened since then. And yet the dream is still very alive for me, because that's often how dreams are. They kind of continually and persist, and because I put so much energy into trying to understand this dream, and now it's tied into my philosophy of life, and my philosophy of life was tied into how I unfolded the dream as a process, that once also it's published, then it's in the we sphere. It's not just my dream anymore. You can relate or not relate to it, or it might speak to you in one way or another, because these relationships have often a kind of common humanity dimension underneath, and that's the beauty of the dreaming as well. It kind of brings us around our common humanity, which is, again, this place of common humanity is the place of the heart. So it can speaks to really the reality and detail of what this situation is about, but it will do so in a way that can be universally accessible through the medium of images, because dreams are images, and through the medium of stories. Okay, so in integral dreaming, I propose that, based on my research on dreams and stories, that dreams are in the process of digesting experience and go from experience to meaning. And then the way it does that is by narratizing, by making it a story, to move from experience to story. And maybe one of the first story that we have is the story that the dream is giving us naturally. We are natural playwrights in our dreams. You don't have to sit down and write. The dream just come out spontaneously. So I think, since we all dreams and animal dreams, so this is a genetic gift. It's a genetic gift. I'm saying genetic because we all kind of programmed to dream. It's hard to stop that process. And yeah, you can remember or not remember them, but when you start having a relationship with your dream, it's incredibly rich. It enriches your life in such a deeper way that you start perceiving yourself in a deeper way, and perceiving the other and the world in a deeper manner. So that's a little bit about dream in general. And so I'll share the dream, and then I'll share about the different dimension of intersubjectivity, the way I understand them. and unpack them in the dream. And then, like, then what did the dream ongoing legacy is still for me at this point around heart knowing. And you'll see why I picked that dream, because in the dream, I am it's fascinating because even the word of the term that I'm going to use to describe the image, you can always see that it can be understood because it's an intersubjective event. It can be said so many different ways, right? So in the dream, there's a good friend of mine, Dwight. He lives here in Hawaii, and me, and we're standing, and he gives me a hug, or I give him a hug, or we are giving each other a hug. I don't know. It was not like the Trump debate where definitely, Kamala, Ray went and shook her head, like she started. But in the dream, I don't know who started the hug. But so am I going to say, oh, he gave me a hug, or I gave him a hug? I mean, we were giving each other a hug. You could see now right away that it's an intersubjective event. If he gives me, I receive. If I give, he receive. But when we both give and receive, like who's doing the what there? One could say, well, a hug happened between us. That would be another way almost, and some language, some indigenous language, that's how they would describe it. They would describe it as the event as opposed to an action that is originating one way or another. And as a result of that, I could feel like some electricity pulsing at the level of my heart. So it was a heart-to-heart, very close stream. And then it was so strong, that pulsing, that it woke me up. And so this is the dream image. Then it becomes like a somatic dream at the level of the heart, almost like, and there could be esoteric in a way, like, okay, it's my heart chakra that open. It's the dream opening my heart chakra, isn't it? Like you could think of it in this way, or a relational dream. It gave me a heart, and it has this warm feeling there, but it was like really, it was impactful because this kind of electric current was going all throughout my body when I woke up, and it stayed with me for a number of minutes. So it was what is called in research an impactful dream. So it impacted me in this way, and I had to take notice. You notice these dreams when that happened. So these impactful dreams, they make an imprint in your memory. And I was going to a conference talking about intersubjectivity, and I decided, okay, I'll make that dream my exhibit A. That would be the example. So I start questioning that dream. Okay, why am I dreaming about Dwight, and what is this? And so I already had started to look at intersubjectivity in dreams around what I call 4 different dimensions of intersubjectivity in dreams. One, oh, well, before I preface this, I want to say that most of our dreams are social events. So even though we are dreaming inside of our own dream mind, that dream are subjective, what we're dreaming about is about the social world and our relationships. So very rarely are there no people in the dream. And if there's no people, there's often a social context. Like last night I had the dream I was serving food, and I couldn't see who I was serving it to. I think it were kids. And I had to do nice, neat little rows of, and I understood the dream because I doing assessment now for the class, but then the dream says, well, it's all beautiful, nicely row. But then I start turning around one of those and it was moldy. I said, no, it cannot be toxic. It could be beautiful and still toxic. So, the dream showed me, oh, like I had an intersubjective concern that I cannot give this food to anybody else. So even though nobody was there in the dream, the concern was an intersubjective concern. So you see, you get the point. So in the dream with Dwight, and in general with dreams and intersubjectivity, The first part of intersubjectivity is like every part of the dream, including the other, is a part of me. Now that's the Gestalt way of understanding dream, Gestalt therapy. Because I'm dreaming about Dwight, then it's my Dwight, it's my projection of Dwight. It's not Dwight, it's the image of Dwight that I create. So therefore, it says something about me more than it says something about Dwight. And then I can ask question about my inner Dwight or however it is. And then often, in Gestalt therapy, you try to find out the complexity of your being from this kind of inner family, anyone who shows up in your dream as a part of you. I got many insights in thinking in this way, and yet to me, when I look at the dream from that place, it's not where the richness lie. And in some ways, I knew Dwight was my friend. He was a warm person. I'm a warm person. We meeting there, and it's all known. It felt like, what else is there? So that's number. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do this Gestalt therapy. It can be really, really deep, this way of thinking about the first part, intersubjectivity, the other as part of you. It's really deep. But that's not the process that I've done, inside here. The second one is the dream is about Dwight. The Dwight is showing in my dream, and maybe the dream is about Dwight. It's about him. It's about my friend Dwight right there. And yes, my friend Dwight at the time was undergoing chemotherapy. I helped him go. I gave him a ride to go he had to do a mask for, some kind of chemotherapy thing. And so we had deep conversation around, nature of life and death in the face of cancer. And I was leaning and encouraging him to a certain extent to, go through the treatment. And not everybody, might have done so. And he didn't do the treatment because I told him to do so, but definitely I was part of this conversation. And so maybe the dream's about him. Maybe I can call him the next morning and say, hey, Dwight, where are you? I dreamt about you last night. We were giving each other a hug. How are you? Like it's a concern. It's my concern about him. Like it comes out of my concern for Dwight. And maybe you have dreams like that and you may act on it or not. And then you think about this person, and then suddenly this person is calling you during the day. And sure enough, you say, hey, my God, I just dreamt about you. And so you know that something is happening inside your relationship with them. Because I trust the dream, I did ask Dwight if I can use his name, and he said, yes, you can. And so I didn't conceal anything, and he knows about all of this. When I do something, I send him the article, I send him so the ethics are good here, taking from a research perspective. So the third one is, now we're talking about intersubjectivity. If the one is inward facing, it's about me, and Dwight is an image of me. If the second one is outward facing, it's about Dwight. Well, the third one will be our relationship. Maybe, especially that the image is like the two of us giving each other a hug. I mean, this is a very beautiful image of a relationship. If there's a beautiful image in the dream, it's kind of celebrating the fact that two men can be that close, and not be afraid of giving each other a hug. So it also can go deeper, questioning what is the nature of our relationship? Where is this taking place? How can I make sure that I nurture this in my relationship with Dwight? So I can use the dream to, again, deepen something with him, or to deepen something with all my friends. Right? And that's where the fourth part of intersubjectivity came into play. And then I thought, wow, this is about the it of the heart between him and I. So then I start to question that, like, what is the heart? Like, and I call this the transsubjective dimension of the dream. because here it's not just Dwight and me and between me and, but it's more like the archetypal space, the heart space that we share in the dream. So I call that the it. And I know Freud called the whatever also something the it, and it was the id, in Latin, the ego, the id, and the superego. And because it was instinctual, and I think he was onto something, meaning with the it, because it's instinctual, it's kind of a little bit outside of our consciousness and our choice. But this it, to me, it's more like a transpersonal it. It's sort of this realm that speaks to the nature of that heart knowing. And so I start to question, wow, what is it to engage the world with the heart? So the dream became like the entry of a philosophical questioning of how to live life from the perspective of the heart. If this is what the dream is about, so it's not just about Dwight and me, but about the it. You could see why I call it the it, like it's this. Others have spoken really about the heart, religion, in many religion, the place of the heart. So it's so present, definitely in Christianity, in Islam, in the chakra system, Indian, in the Chinese philosophy, when they speak about even the mind, the term is the heart mind. It's not disconnected, meaning it's that's mental place, and yet connected to a complex of what cannot be necessarily just mentalized. Okay. And yesterday I actually asked AI, what it thinks of what is hard knowing. I just wanted to see what AI had to say, and it was pretty good. It was nice. It was kind of, it was how would you say? And it spoke about the idea of a deep meaning of moral concern, existential concerns, of the fact that you can know something without logic. And so he was pointing out to all these different aspects that may be connected to heart knowing. And I had a student who did a dissertation on heart knowing in the East-West psychology program. And I quote her work in the article. Her name is Alexandra Whitney. Beautiful, beautiful work. And she went into the different religion, because I was East-West, and that's what we did in East-West at the time, compare heart knowing in different religion. And so I've been influenced by reading that, definitely in 2005, and the dream came 10 years later. Now I take a pause because something happened. About 36 hours, I had the dream. I start to dwell on it. And now it shifted, something shifted. And so for those of you who read the article, you know what I'm talking about here. But what happened is I was at Constant Jones' house for a proposal defense of one of our students. And I received a call from my brother and from Montreal. So I pick up the call. My brother never calls me, so I knew it was urgent. So I pick up the call. And then he's telling me my dad had a heart event. He never had a heart event in his life, like he had something, his heart stopped pumping or couldn't pump enough, and never had been on medication, no whatsoever. And then my brother said, well, we had to bring him at the hospital. And then they asked me there right there and then, do you want us to do something? And then so, well, how old is your dad? And so it was a kind of saying, well, do we do the procedure or we just let him go? And my dad's a physician, and he would always say, you do the procedure, and I'm sure that you would want someone like my son to say, you do the procedure. So my brother said, you do the procedure. And so they did the procedure. They put a pacemaker, and then he survived. He could have died there, no natural death, but he survived and came out. But it totally changed now the intersubjective landscape of this dream. Now, I mean, I'm starting, you see, like the dream almost like if I were to count the hours, I think I had the dream probably when he had the heart event. So I'm feeling like it was like Dwight was in the dream with the electricity in the heart and all of this, like, and that the electric, all the, but I think I was kind of tuning into my dad. But in the dream, it was not my dad, but it was Dwight. And that I had to look further. It's like, why was it Dwight and not my dad? And there's a solution for that question too. And I don't know if we're going to get to that today, but there's a meaning, like eventually I found out why it was like that. Well, I can tell you right away. Dwight, for a moment, became my therapist, meaning like we play each other's role like this of a therapy called aqua nirvana or something like that. So it's sort of a therapy that you do underwater. It was not like a sit-down therapy or whatever. But I'm saying that in that moment, he became my therapist for a 2 hour long session, the first hour-long session we did. And at the very end of the session, he put me underwater in this kind of fetus position. I felt like I was held there forever and very comfortable, really comfortable without breathing and everything. I just felt like maybe it felt like many minutes. It might have been just a minute, but even a minute underwater like this. But it felt so. And then suddenly he took me out of the water, and then he hugged me, and then put my head on this side, and then immediately I saw the image of me being held by my mother, like this. It was so healing. And then he put me back underwater, and then held me there the same way, and then take me out, and then puts me back on his shoulder on the other side. And now I have the image of my father holding me. And that was really much more healing than the first one, And my father was very loving when I was a kid. It's just like when you grow up, the intersubjective, whatever, it's teenager stuff and adult stuff. And, but I was able to have that memory of this beautiful being held by my dad that was mediated by the therapist, which was Dwight. So this image of Dwight holding me is really my dad holding me too, because it happened in therapy. It's called transference. So then I thought, if I think of Dwight as my therapist in the dream, it's my therapist and it's my dad. And that was a healing moment for me in that therapy. And then the dream kind of aligns me connecting with my dad, me connecting with Dwight, me connecting with the therapy moment that connects me to the memory of way past. You could see like one image now is so rich. The intersubjective space is thick and full now, like pushing and pulling in the direction of my youth and then in the direction of the future, because he was asking me now, Danielle, you're going to go to Montreal. Right away, I bought a ticket. How are you going to show up for your dad? And the question was, well, the dream was showing me how. The only way you can show up with your dad is with your heart. And, I arrived in Montreal, and my dad was just starting to have dementia. And then right at that moment, I say in the article that the texture of our relationship was rip. I knew who he was, but he couldn't recognize me. And it was also right after an operation. And then the operation gives you almost, with all the medication and all of that, it was almost like dementia, but there was other kind of things happening up with also the medication that subside on the side. And then he, eventually could recognize me. And then he went on to live for a good 5 years, and we had really good time. We were able to, it had a beautiful, I think it was the right choice, you know, to bring him back. Um, so um, so now you're saying, you know, that I'm questioning the relationship in the dream. I call this a scholarly personal narrative because every little question that I'm asking has a philosophical underpinning and has a personal underpinning. So I'm exploring both the philosophical and the personal in the article. So if you are, you know, interested in reading it, you'll see uh, it's it's my story. It it has this narrative arc to it, and yet there's this also philosophical question that I'm asking around the nature of relationship, of intersubjectivity, and then eventually asking myself the question, well, how I show up from the heart, what's this heart knowing, and what does heart knowing means with my father at this time, right? I know some of us have been dealing with aging parents and going through that. Like you have to source something within you that is different than when your parent is your parent. Now you're becoming the parent. And like I was becoming the parent for my dad. And my dad was, you know, definitely in the reverse role here, even though he's still my dad and still want to assert authority and everything. You know, the role are somewhat reverse here. And the dream tremendously helped me navigate that period. You know, I went back over and over with this dream, thinking, okay, now how to be now with my dad from that place or with my family. Yeah. And I knew that it had an effect as soon as I stepped into the hospital, because usually I had an aversion to hospital. I just do. I just can't stand being in a hospital. And I don't know, when I went to see my dad this time, that aversion was not there at all. I needed to be there. I was there. I was present. And not only this, but I was seeing, oh my God, there's a lot of heart. A lot of people are inside of this heart space with, you know, the other family in the other room. And so I'm thinking, I'm in, and a lot of the care that, you know, the medical staff is giving, you know, to everyone. And yes, there's the whole science of it, and there's broken system and whatnot. But really underneath it, it's like someone trying to take care of my dad. I'm really grateful. Uh, well, hopefully you don't make a mistake, and we don't know what is the next step, but well, let's try to be in the best way with him. And I could see that it's so important to be inside of the heart to have these conversations so that they are not just like, oh, the doctor told me that, and then suddenly you feel it like it's like a dagger in your heart. Oh, this doctor doesn't have any manner because he or she didn't consider that dimension, you know, right at that moment. And yes, it's a big ask for people at the hospital. And yet it's there. You could feel it was palpable in and so I was interacting with my intersubjective feel. I would think that was informed with the nurses and with the other from that place too. So now you could see, okay, how can such a simple dream have such a big impact? Okay. Um, there's other part of the dream and of this that I will let you read. There's a whole dimension around reciprocal embeddedness and the whole dimension, but that will be my next talk in maybe a month or 2 months from now. Since this is Couch as a Conversation, I just want to, you know, welcome any question, any feedback, um, you know, any place where, you know, you wish to share similar experience or something like that. So thank you. Thank you for your attention. Uh, and and you know, in case there's not enough conversation, we can also do a short experiential at one point. But want to hear you. And your hand is up.
Hi, I have a question. Did that dream change you forever in how you've been since then, all the way around, or was it mostly just with your family and your father at that time?
You know, like someone else can be better judge of this. I felt like it did. I feel like the dream, like literally, and they say, oh, if you open your third eye, you start to see more. If you open your heart, you start to feel more. I, it's not the only heart opening I had in my life. I had other ones at other times, but this one, I think it was needed to enter that time with my dad. What it helped me also to realize is that is okay to ask the question, like, how does my class feels like for the students who are taking them, you know? So a class is an intersubjective event. How am I setting it up so that I'm not saying, okay, we're going to do heart knowing together, but just like pushing, not pushing, I would just say setting up a context that is kind, that is supportive, all these other things without saying that it's hard knowing. But I think so in that way, I think it fortified something that I was already doing, but it just solidified it. And 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 I always say to the student, choose wise what you're writing about because it starts acting into your life. So of course, if I'm gonna like decide to write on that about that, then I'm gonna start. I'm gonna see it more within me and others and so forth. Where you put your attention is what you tend to see. So yeah, did it make me a saint? I don't know. I don't know.
No, probably it probably didn't make you a saint, but the reason that I ask you the question is, in my experience with you, which is limited, it was really just through the orientation that we had, and now here, you seem to be, to me, my feeling of you is that you're a very joyful person. I look at your eyes and I see the eyes of somebody who's very joyful. And even as you speak and you speak about these things that are serious, you speak joyfully of them. And I wondered if that became amplified through that experience or if that's just who you've always been.
A little bit of both, because you know we can be traumatized by death and traumatized by the burden of care. And yes, I didn't have to do all the burden of care. So in Canada, you know, I had three brothers, so we could split the caring. And then there were good institutions that didn't make us being broken if we want to give good care to our dads. We didn't have to do these ethical decisions that here, you know, might be more traumatic because, you know, you have a different social system. So that's another situation. But I would say, yeah, I have a joyful disposition. And yet this could have, you know, when I'm in the sadness part, I am in the sadness part. And yes, like one day when I was living in Inverness, the deer came into and ate all the garden, everything. And I went out there and started sobbing. And I was a little shifted inside of my heart. That was one of the first heart opening. And then I felt so much love for the deer right at that moment that I thought, well, who am I to say that this deer, you know, didn't have the right to come and do this right now? I'm not going to be upset at the deer. You know, like I saw there was a deeper story besides my frustration that, oh, now I have to start all over again. That, no, I'm sharing this garden with the deer, and the deer came. And this is so beautiful. You know, I don't know how to express it other than that, but I was actually surprised that day that that was my reaction. So there's a deeper reaction, I think, underneath the frustration. Yeah, there is a frustration, but if you go underneath, I mean, I'm going to go more Indian philosophy here. They call it the root of consciousness is Sat, Chit, Ananda. And Ananda is bliss and joy. Sat is being, Chit is consciousness and being. So underneath everything is that, you know? So I think, and the heart is the place where you sort of decide, okay, I'm going to let that circulate as well, even though there's tears, even though there's all these other things are present as well, you know? Yeah. Thank you. This is a great question. I hope, yeah, yeah. So yes and no. Yeah. Yeah. Radia, so good to see you.
Hi, how are you? Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
I I have a somewhat similar question to Anne. As you were talking, I was seeing you go back and I was seeing you come forward, and you were breaking down all the learning and the knowing that happened for you. And as you were talking, I was thinking, what do you do with that? You know, what do you do with that in real life? And does it change you? Does it, you know, how does it manifest in your life now, today, other than sharing? I mean, does it show up? And so I was thinking, what would it be like now that you've had heart knowing and you've had it for a little while now, and you've talked about it, you've written about it, you've thought about it, you've been, you know, you've embodied it. You know, what are you now walking every day in heart knowing? And I was thinking to myself, well, what would it be like if I walked every day in heart knowing? How would it change my behavior, but how would it also change the behavior of the people around me if that was my 100% consciousness? You know, so that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about it because of the way you pulled it apart. And I heard you say things this time that I didn't hear you say at another time, which made it even more interesting to me. Like, oh, you discovered something else. And it made me think of when I was writing this last time, where I feel like I actually broke through, that there's so many things that I want to talk about, or so many things that I'm interested in, or so many things that I could take further and do what you did. I feel like I understood what you did, even though it evolved over time. I don't know where I'm going with this other than
Yeah.
that happening that you did. I'm very interested in the process of that happening, and how often can we do that? So that's one. And the second is, do you use the heart knowing every moment of your life, or only when the deer come and eat the flowers? Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm far from being a realized person. So no, I'm but you know, each time I stepped in at CIIS, I always felt like I'm part of something bigger, and it sustains me in community, even like the physical walking at CIIS, even if I was alone in the building. So when we do this event, when I'm doing this event with you, I feel that. I feel like, okay, it's me. And yet I'm feeling, okay, I don't know if there's this program around integral consciousness that I'm a big part of. And I feel like, okay, this is also the way that it expresses itself through me. And if I didn't write and if I didn't share, then it would be what Erickson would say, you know, it's either you're generative or you start to resent, you know. Then I would go into, usually it's this what happened in your 60s, you start resent if you don't continue to be generative, or else, you know, however else. But that's so, but it is a practice. Yeah, you know, when I'm frustrated and the world is not going the way I want it to be, oh my God, and you know, but I'm more honest, you know, I feel a little bit, and when it's dissonant, perhaps sometimes I'm more courageous. So being from the heart is saying, okay, something needs to be said here. I know, can I do it? I tend to be conflict avoidant as a personality. So I'm still working on that, because it feels to me as if, oh, if I'm, you know, bringing feedback too strongly to students, maybe they won't like me anymore or something or whatever. I'm still working at this even as a seasoned teacher, you know, like how will this be received? And but now I'm doing therapy with you, so we could go in that direction. Yeah. You
And
see,
I just,
yeah.
sorry.
The beautiful question that you brought though is that I want you to say is like, oh yeah, how can I bring more of that into my life? That's the one that I want you. So me, it's me, but really what's important is like, okay, well, how do you bring heart knowing into your life? Yeah.
And I agree. I appreciate that, because what I was realizing as you were just speaking is that, oh, it's like carrying spirit or carrying ritual, you know, some kind of space that you believe in, which is a heart space, and entering and being that person in that space. And so, yes, absolutely. When I was writing, I'm going back to that writing. When I was writing, it was ritual for me. And I said,
Mhm.
yes, I have to be in ritual in my communication, even though it may look like just words on paper. It's where I'm coming from. It's from deep inside of, and how I want to present or connect. So yes, it is about me too, as I listen to what you're saying. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. Wonderful.
But I had
Yeah.
one quick question. So do you want to say hi to Debbie first?
Well, Debbie was fascinating because she was part of some of the earlier conversation on reciprocal embeddedness, and she also is a very heart-centered person, and she had an acronym for, I believe, for heart, and she does work a lot with acronyms, and so I just so appreciate your work too. So you have a
Yeah,
question?
I
Mala?
didn't want to
Oh, go
miss
ahead.
this at all, Danielle. There's no way I would miss this. This is beautiful. I'm glad you are doing the presentation, and I'm glad you're going to have another one to continue.
Yeah, thank you.
And I hope I can watch the recording that I missed of this. But yeah, I was actually going to bring up reciprocal embeddedness. I was sure that you had touched on it in the earlier portion of the Zoom, but
No, it's the next talk.
oh, it's the next talk. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Because it occurs to me, you know, in just the reading that I've done of your work and taking the dream class, and you know, I'm so interested in all of it. And it just seems to me that the question about, you know, your heart knowing and how it kind of how you live in it, maybe that really is rooted in the reciprocal embeddedness, because aren't we all reciprocally embedded in this moment together, you know? So that sort of energy of everything, that all the knowledge that you've made and that you've accessed on the shoulders of others, you know, and now we're part of that thread, you know, we're part of that interweaving. So
Yeah.
it's really, it's very lovely.
Yeah, I shared this wonderful painting, dream image. I'll share it again, just for those who came afterwards, from Paloma Dominguez from San Miguel de Allende. Beautiful dream-like type, and thinking of dreams and reciprocal embeddedness in a way. The body, the hurt body, the tree body, eyes in the sky, nest, and then the central place of the heart, and of course the heart symbology so strongly there in both the indigenous you know, Mexicano Mexican iconography and then the Christian, and no wonder that they met there, right? So and it, you know, you still see that so much, this iconography, when you go to Mexico. Yeah. And an image of reciprocal embeddedness too, eh? I'm the tree is me, I'm the earth is me, I'm the sky, I'm the leaf, and they are me. Yeah. And I didn't push this too much. I mean, your question is calling me to unpack maybe the reciprocal embedded part of intersubjectivity, you know? That there is something to unpack there. There's something to unpack. I'm thinking reciprocal embeddedness is more system-like, but from an intersubjective place, it's also there, you know, when you start, you know, like that's why I was saying with the dream earlier, you say, I said, well, I'm sharing the dream of the hug. Is it me giving him a hug, him giving his, or we reciprocally giving each other a hug? And no wonder that the insight of reciprocal embeddedness came out of looking at that dream, because that's the enactment right there. There's an embrace that is a mutual embrace. So, and yeah, so there's something about that, like how our relationship embracing, how do we embrace them? How do we embrace the other in the relationship? And then there's all of these other thing around, creating good boundaries with others so that you don't feel invaded, and or there's other terms like codependent. So yeah, there's all these other things that one works needs to be done, so I'm not saying that it's all fuzzy and just connection all around. That's not what I'm saying. But yeah, I should definitely unpack that. Yeah, your question is bringing me thinking, oh yeah, there's some dimension there. Or maybe you do. Yeah. I know you're working with teaching compassion, which is compassion is a heart knowing, it's a core of a heart knowing space, and you're teaching it through theater. So it's like dreams. So what we do is each other in our respective work, they speak to, yeah, it speaks to each other in those different fields. What do you say? How do you bring that into your work yourself? Intersubjectivity and compassion. How I mean, this is what I do with you. I'm interested in the conversation. It's not just me seeing. So you don't have to answer, but I would be interested. Continue that on conversation with you next time we meet.
Yeah, for sure.
Marla and I, like Radia, we're meeting because we are. I'm on the chair of the dissertation committee, just for those who don't know. So we meet almost every other week, to discuss work. So yeah, thank you. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the deepening awareness that I've been able to experience being at CIIS and being in the Transformative Studies program, and there's just the expansion of my own, I guess, awareness of myself and my excavating. I've been thinking a lot about that word excavating lately, of my identity and of my, deeply held assumptions. And I think for me, just heart knowing is expanding because I'm starting to know myself more deeply and like really give myself the time and the space to grieve how I thought I knew myself, just releasing some of that. It's very emotional, to think about how, and then thinking of myself as having been a teacher for 25 years and thinking, wow, is how much better of a teacher I could have been, if I would have had some of this awareness earlier on. And then being able to be empathic toward myself, and say, this is my journey. And, so it's like a circle, it's like a cycle maybe, or the heroine's journey, just, dipping down into those deep places of meeting my own kind of gorgons or whatever they're called, and then trying to bring that back, and say, we're strong and we're resilient and we're in a loving place, and that we can learn from each other. So I don't know, that's a few things that are bubbling up.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. Inside of the story, when we have an opening and then we look back, and yeah, the grieving that we can do when we look back. And that's a beautiful space. And then there's also what's coming, you know, like the future that now that we're creating. I was floored once when at a talk by Thurman, the Buddhist philosopher, forgot his first name, the father of Uma Thurman, the actress, and Rob Thurman. Yes, thank you. He came to CIIS and went to as a student in his class, and then I continue following him and conferences, and then he said something about the medicine Buddha that says when you heal something, really deeply heal something, it heals at all plane at all time. So this grieving is also the healing of your past, and the future. It's like anyways, it's a kind of metaphor. It's a metaphysical vision of healing. But when he said this, it floored me, and I stayed with it. It's still staying with me. I don't know, as a researcher, how this can be explored in one way or another. But or is it a matter of fate that you just believe it is so? But I'm thinking of you, Radia, as well. It's like saying, if you heal now, it's ashe. It's like it is heal, and it's heal in all the direction. It's ashe. That I think that's the energy of ashe. It is so. It is so. So that's. I'm not saying, oh, you have to revise your story or anything. I'm not saying you should change your story or anything, but that because the living moment is where you are, your consciousness is. Now you're healing the past, when you have the regrets is maybe there, but that's information, and that you can let that move. Yeah. Thank you. Well,
May
this
I
is
say something to Marla?
Yeah. And then we'll end on
Okay,
this.
okay, it's time. Just briefly that it's kind of sounds like the moment that you're having is something to put in your work. It's something to put in the play that, we don't start being empathetic on day one. Maybe it happens on day 21, and then it's a big aha moment or whatever it is. Maybe it's very quiet. I don't know. But maybe there's that awareness to share with your audience when you're working on your play.
Oh. Great.
That's it.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank
Thank you so
everyone
much.
for as they say, attention is the greatest gift that you can give someone, that you gave me your attention, and, hopefully I reciprocally gave you attention and holding you in a good space here. And so welcome. And yes, let's continue the conversation and some other time, you'll see. So goodbye, everyone.